Everyone, today I'm going to be doing a skill breakdown for Sir Gawain. Gawain is a neutral defender that you recruit during Act 3 during the Beyond the Veil story mission. You are prompted with a choice to either recruit Sir Gawain or the Faerie Knight. Now admittedly, of the two, I do think the Faerie Knight is the stronger choice and a much more fun choice, but if you are not going Old Faith, that kind of defaults you to Gawain, and there's already a lot of defenders in the game and you don't really need many because you're only ever going to be bringing one to any given mission, really. And I'm sure you can see that he is much lower level than most characters that I do my videos on, but I figured for a skill breakdown I don't need to have them fully leveled, and I just kind of felt like doing a skill breakdown on him now that I've unlocked his tier 3. I can see what he has, and there's no abilities here that are really unique to him, so I can kind of give my take on some of these abilities as we go. Before we jump into the skill breakdown, my overall take on him is he's a definitely much more offensively oriented defender, pretty similar to the Red Knight, though not quite as much, I would say. And honestly, you're probably not going to be using him unless you really want that offensive playstyle. One major downside to him is this negative trait here, conservative. Active skills cost 3 skill points instead of 2, and that's rough. Enough all of that, let's go ahead and get into the skills, and you can decide for yourself if this is a hero you want to use. Beginning in tier 1, I'll sort of briefly go over the common stuff that defenders have. We have his strike attack for 3 AP, 100% weapon damage. Then for the upgrades we have a bleed effect you can put on it, extra damage, get an AP back when killing a unit, and get an AP back for the first strike on each enemy, so sort of making this a net cost of 2 for the first attack on every different enemy you hit with this. The killing blow is kind of a weird pick. He is more offensively oriented, so he is more likely to get this, but he is still a defender, so probably not something you're gonna want to keep on him. These skills here are stuff he starts with, so if you do choose to use him, I would probably respec him a little. We have shield charge, amazing move, great mobility, knockdown to engage or aid an ally, 25% weapon damage for shield spikes, wade charge, reduce the cooldown by 1, extended charge, increase the range by 2, and momentum. If you kill a unit with this, instantly reset. I've mentioned before, you pretty much never get this, so don't put a skill point here. The passives, we have strength for 10% more weapon damage. Generally wouldn't take this on a defender, but if you're going to use him, I would definitely lean into that offensiveness, and I think this is actually a decent pick on him. Vigilance, reduce the damage taken from opportunity attacks and overwatch attacks, and robust for the 10% HP and vitality bonus. Special to him as a defender, though, we have Death Strike. I can speak to the effectiveness of Death Strike even on a defender, having used this on the Red Knight. 170% weapon damage is huge, but it has very little armor breaking and heavily reduced damage for every point of armor they have, so you only want to use this if they are knocked down, getting a backstab, or if they have no armor, or ideally some combination of these. With the upgrades, Rending Blow is 15% weapon damage, Bloodletting, it causes bleeding, Swiftness, reduce the cost by 1, and Fast Recovery, reduce the cooldown by 1. So this can get down to a 1-turn cooldown, meaning you can use it every single turn. I do plan to test him out a little bit in the end game, but it wouldn't surprise me if, like the Red Knight, using Death Strike, he could break into triple-digit damage, which is good for a defender. I mean, that's pretty good in general, but especially impressive for a defender. Going into his more unique passive, we have Monster Hunter. The only other hero off the top of my head I can remember this also being on is Lucan. Just 20% more weapon damage, so in tier 1 he already has plus 30%. That's pretty good. And then with each of these upgrades you can get an extra 10% damage to Seelie and Unseelie, the Lost, and Fomorians. Pretty much everyone except for human enemies. So this is effectively a 30% damage against almost all enemy types. And with this it's 40%. That's really helps make up for his sort of base defender damage, and then fleet-footed for +1 movement AP. Moving on to tier 2, we sort of have a classic defender ability in the form of Taunt. It's a strong crowd control, It can be used sort of offensively and defensively. Obviously, in the traditional sense, defensively, it protects your party members. Offensively, you can try and bait enemies to run past your allies and get opportunity attacks. It's a very strong move, and I think this is good for him. Even as an offensively oriented defender, he still can provide some of that defensive support for the team. With the upgrades, armor bait, increase the amount of armor he has when he taunts. Very useful if you're going to be taking hits. Fomorian Curse, reduce the cost by 1 AP, bringing this down to 2. Demoralize, reduce the AP of affected targets by 1. And then Warcry, increase the range by 1. This is probably the least important upgrade on this ability. It already has a decent range of 4. I don't usually find this making a huge difference, but it is an upgrade you're going to want to get eventually. Next is Flurry. Lets you attack 2 targets for 100% weapon damage. This move is alright, I think. 4 AP, so it is 1 more than Strike. And as long as they're adjacent, so they don't need to be next to each other, kind of like Cleave. Cooldown of 1 at base, so you can use this every turn. With Armor Breaker, it gains 30% armor breaking, which is good. Zestful Flurry, gain 1 AP when you kill a unit, so there is a chance to refund this ability a bit and lower its net cost. Dismemberment, increase the weapon damage by 15%. And Extended Flurry, increase the amount of targets you can hit with this by 1, potentially 3. If you can get 3 kills, at net costs of 1 AP. Odds of that happening are pretty low, so I wouldn't really bank on that. Overall, it's a solid ability. And the rest of this is also standard passes. We have Armorer, reduce the AP penalty from heavy armor by 1, and then you have 10% HP upgrade with 2 fitted armors, and 2 armor upgrades with thick skinned. At max level, this is 4 each for a total bonus of 8. Strong-willed, 30% mental debuff resist, and another robust for that 10% vitality and HP. Finally, getting into his tier 3, we have a familiar ability that you'll recognize on pretty much every Sage, Freezing Attack. 100% weapon damage, but freezes them for 1 turn. I think this is actually a really good ability on him. As a defender, he's going to be up in melee a lot, getting in their faces, getting a lot of attacks. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to use Freezing Attack. Sages, on the other hand, the way I like to play them, they're not in melee a lot. I move them in sort of surgically, get them in, get whatever attacks they need to get, and then pull them back out to a safe position. You don't need to worry about that with Gawain. He's a defender. He can take the hits and be fine. Having a strong CC move with moderate damage on him, I think is a pretty effective move to have. With the upgrades, Brittle Armor for 50% armor break, Vulnerability, so now it applies a 20% vulnerability debuff, so he can kind of set up for follow-up attacks. Lasting Cold applies a chill effect for 2 turns after the freeze wears off. And Chill to the Bone, reduce the cooldown by 1. This brings it down to 2, and you can spam this ability much, much more. Like I said, compared to Sages, I think he'll be using this ability way more frequently and get a lot more mileage out of it. After that, it's a lot of passives, and they are a bit different from some of the other defenders. The first example of this is he has Unyielding in tier 3 instead of All Resistance, which is, as I'm sure you know, the defensive passive that boosts the debuff resistances of your defenders. He will have lower debuff resistance than his peers because of this. Normally, you find this in tier 1, and this isn't a bad passive. You're probably going to take some of this. With Unyielding at base, regain 4 HP per hit. Going into upgrades, we have Endurance for plus 10% Vitality from accessories and trinkets. Extra HP, another 5% from your armor sigil. Physical resistance, so there is some physical debuff resist in 15%. And then Ruthlessness, plus 4 HP for a kill. These will scale up to, I believe, 6 per hit and 6 per kill at max level. So if he gets a kill, that's 12 HP. This isn't as huge for him as a defender, because he's going to have so much HP that's not a lot. If you're taking this, you're not really doing it for the HP recovery, you're doing it for the extra HP here and the physical resistance. He does have the standard shield block, which is very good. Every defender is going to want this, even an offensive one like Gawain, as block is the most powerful damage reduction ability that any defender has. At base, increase block by 5% with shield bait, another 5% while using taunt or guard. He does have taunt, so just further reducing that damage he's taking while taunting. Flank defense, he has 50% block efficiency for either side of him, Normally a flanking enemy bypasses block, now at least there's some damage negation. This is a very good one. Stalwart Defender, plus 5% block at full HP, and this sort of decreases as you reach 0. And the last First Strike, the first attack from each enemy in an encounter is reduced by 100% if the attack is blocked. So there's gear out there that makes it so you always turn to face an enemy. If you get one of those, this ability is amazing. And just, you're going to be skipping out on so much incoming damage. Strength for another 10% weapon damage. I would probably take this on him, lean into his strengths. Robust, more vitality, more HP, and then hardened armor, reduce that armor loss by 20%, making him tankier. Sir Gawain is sort of an interesting case. I've never actually really bothered putting a lot of effort into him. There's definitely other defenders I would prefer to use over him, but he does seem like he has some decent damage dealing potential if you really want to go for a very offensively oriented team comp. His conservative ability definitely makes him a bit more strapped for skill points, but overall my sort of take on him as it stands is he's alright. But unfortunately there's just other defenders that are really good. I do plan to play around with him. You can kind of see my round table lineup right now. I have a lot of ideas and comps I plan to mess around with. If I find something I like, I'll end up doing a build video on him and update my opinion then. For now, if what you saw interested you, awesome. Let me know how he turns out for you. I am definitely curious to know. I hope this was helpful for some players out there to help determine whether they want to take Gawain or the Faerie Knight, if he's worth keeping around or bothering to level up. This is just sort of my take on his skills and his skill tree. And as always, thanks for watching.